A reading from the Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to St. Matthew. Then Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter declared to him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, "Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go yonder and pray." And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me." And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, "My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, "So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." Again, for the 2nd time, he went away and prayed, "My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, thy will be done." And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words. Ushuhan la la aminai. It's a solemn day, so I'm going to start with a funny story. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my day. I got up and I hadn't had much sleep the night before, so I was very, very tired, even more than usual in the morning. And I went up taking classes, and I went to 3 classes in a row, and it was very hot. I was sweating and very uncomfortable, and I was very hungry. It was hard to find soma food around my classes, and I was kind of starting to get into a bad mood. The classes were actually a little bit boring today. And then I took a lift to the airport to try to get an earlier flight. And I was on the list. I was on standby to get an earlier flight down to San Diego. And I was texting Father Danny, and I said, "Father Danny, listen, pray. I'm third in line. I'm the 3rd standby passenger. Pray." And he said, "Oh, sure, I will, Father." And then 2 minutes later, I checked the list, and I'm number 5 on the list. And I texted him and I said, "I don't know what you're praying for, but stop." And so I didn't make that flight. And then I made it to the original flight. It was delayed, but it's okay. And I landed, and I was getting impatient. People were taking a long time to get off the plane, and then I got to my car, and then I drove straight here. I was really trying to come here fast. I got here about a half an hour ago. And then on the way, people were going slow on the highway, which is a very bad sin. Anyway, I got here. Why am I telling you this story? I don't know what kind of day I had. I don't know what that was. I know there's one thing that I know it wasn't, though. It was not a cross. I didn't carry a cross today. I didn't suffer. It wasn't suffering today. It really wasn't. These distinctions are important to make. Look, we're united. It's important to unite and bring things together. But sometimes the best way to bring things together is to separate them. It's going to be ironic today. It's to make distinctions is a really good way to unite things. To see the proper place of all these things is to really show how they're united in the right way. We're united. The priest, for example, is united to Christ. The priest is united to Jesus. You see, he's in persona Christi. But he's not Jesus. He acts with the power of Christ when he forgives sins, when he says Mass. But there's no priest that's Jesus except Jesus. All of the baptized, all of you are Christian. But none of you are Christ. You have to make a distinction. And yes, okay, I'm going to correct one thing I said. You can unite your sufferings to the cross, but they're not the cross. You can offer up your days for the salvation of souls, but you don't save any souls. Make these distinctions. It's very important. Because, well, one of the first heresies that was condemned early in the church is called Pelagianism. And Pelagianism is the belief that we're capable of salvation without God's grace. Or the sort of initial push towards salvation is our own. And grace sort of comes second. It's condemned. One of the first things the church condemned is that we could save ourselves by all of our effort. And so if we forget the distinctions that I made earlier, it's worse than Pelagianism. It's like super Pelagianism. If I think for 1 second that my suffering is somehow the suffering of Christ, yes, unite it, fine, but you only unite two things that are different. You only offer up something that's not already there. So no, I didn't carry any cross today. I got annoyed because I was tired because I stayed up too late last night watching Netflix. That's not a cross. That's my own fault. So where does grace operate? Grace doesn't operate by turning us into Jesus in this magical way, and then from that point on, we're just perfect. And every time we feel bad, that's the cross. It's not. Where does grace work? Well, let's look at what Jesus says in the gospel today. He's there and he's suffering. Right? He's in the garden. And he tries. This is an example of what I'm talking about. He tries, he brings his disciples with him, and he brings 3 as close as he can. Peter, James, and John. Okay, come as close as you can. And he goes and prays. Just come and he just invites them to pray with him as in the most intimate time in his life. And he goes and prays, and what do? They fall asleep. Show just more proof. Peter, James, and John, his closest friends, fell asleep when Jesus asked them to be united to him. They dozed off. So when he goes back, what does he tell them? Because, one of the reasons they slept was because of sorrow. They were grieving because they didn't know what was going to happen. They were nervous, they were sad, they were upset. And that just took so much energy, sapped their energy, they just kind of passed out. So what did Jesus come and tell them? Did Jesus come and tell them, no, unite your sufferings with me? What you're doing is carrying my cross. No, Jesus is not as dramatic as we are. He's actually a very plain-spoken person. You know what he said to them? Wake up and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. This is grace. This is grace incarnate speaking to the closest disciples. This is how grace works. Grace worked today not when I made a kind of dramatic flair offering of my unbelievable sufferings of being stuck at the airport for an hour and uniting it to God for the salvation of souls. I didn't do that. Grace didn't work that way. Grace worked when I realized how annoyed I was and how bad I was tempted to feel sorry for myself, and then I laughed. And when I laughed at myself and how silly I was, that was grace working. That's when grace worked in my heart. When I stopped taking myself so seriously. And that's a step in the right direction. Because there are martyrs in our church and in our history. But the martyrs, believe it or not, were not drama queens. One of my favorites. You know the story of St. Lawrence? Great first century martyr. You want to talk about uniting yourself to Christ? He was roasted alive. You know that story? They tied him to a big stick, and they lit a fire underneath him, and they just burned him alive, roasted him slowly. You know how St. Lawrence handled it? Not like a dramatic person today. You know how he handled it? He joked around. He laughed. He made fun of the people that were torturing him. He said, he told his torturers, okay, I'm cooked on this side, you can flip me over. That's a direct, ancient quote from St. Lawrence. That's how grace works. It's the first steps, because in the end, it starts, pray that you may not enter into temptation. Don't take yourself that seriously. Where does it go, though? It does end up at the cross. But we're not Jesus. Christ is Christ. But if we're even going to make it there, the first step is humility. And the humility to accept that I'm not Christ and I'm not the Savior and I can't save myself. And everything that God does for me, I at best receive. And I never earn. And if I can laugh at myself and realize how helpless I am and how weak I am, then I can be even more receptive. And then I can get even closer to Him. And I can go to the cross not as if I'm part of it, but as somebody who needs desperately for even 5 seconds of decent living, needs the blood and water that poured forth from His side. That's how Holy Week begins. It ends with the resurrection. So let's walk towards the cross during these days so that we can run to the empty tomb with Peter and John.